Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Isaiah Donaldson, and I'm the marketing specialist here at DISYS. Today's webinar is in-user computing dead? How to survive the device revolution. If you would like to find out more information about DISYS and our services that we provide, please visit our website at disys.com or one of our many social media pages. Today, we have everyone muted, but please use if you have GoToWebinar panel open, please use the chat box to send us any questions that you may have during the presentation. Our presenter today is Michael Prager. He's the CEO of MRK Technology Marketing and a DISYS Fellow. Michael is a 40-year technology and marketing veteran with managerial and executive experience in IT, product management, product marketing, marketing research, and analysis. In 2004, he founded MRK at San Francisco Bay Area consultancy that focuses on technology, legal, and biotech products. Before launching MRK, Michael spent over a decade as VP of Ziff Davis Market Experts, providing insight, ideation, and creation of marketing offerings for a who's who of the tech industry. He has held worldwide marketing roles for Hitachi, Data Systems, AST, and cloud pioneer FutureLink, one of the first ASPs offering virtual desktop services to a global audience of IT and LOB constituents, and is a frequent speaker at industry conferences, webinars, and CIO roundtable events. Michael, I'm going to hand it over to you now.
Thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. Okay, let me see. Are you seeing my screen? Are you seeing the agenda? Terrific. Okay, just want to make sure. One can never tell. So yeah, I mean, one of the great things I enjoy in my role now are doing CIO roundtable events. And last night here in New York City, I had a dinner event with about 80 or 90 local CIOs and top IT people. And the discussion last night was around how infrastructure is changing, and really that has a lot of impact on end-user computing in a lot of ways. One of the things I did a long time ago, I was early in the ASP revolution, we were serving up desktops, Windows desktops basically, to end users with thin clients. It's really not so different what mainframes did back in the 60s. And again, today we're seeing more and more of a reliance on the back end to offer services to a variety of clients that are kind of like thin devices. And that impact of the infrastructure on infrastructure is dramatic, because now in this world of hyper-converged infrastructure on the back end, more and more we're seeing the instances of applications become more virtualized, more mobile, what have you, to support this growing workforce and the growing number of devices. So what I want to do today is talk about the stuff on this agenda. We'll talk about the tech trends that are having a big impact on end-user computing now, really the good news about device growth, what that means for us as IT professionals, how all of the different services that we need to support users are kind of converging now, and some best practices for all of you as you think about deploying all of these new device types that we are dealing with. So let's start off with taking a look at some of the big trends that impact end-user computing. 12 years ago, 2004, some sales exec or some CEO walked into his IT guys with an iPhone in his hand, and it was the first iPhone probably that got out into consumer land. And he said, after playing it for a couple of days, he said to the IT guy, "I gotta have this to access our email. How can we take this device and make this part of how we do our business?" And on that fateful day, everything in IT changed, because over time, the experiences that users achieve when they load in or download an app from the App Store, when they give feedback on those applications, when they interact with a retail partner, play a game with others. That experience, that user interface, and the whole user experience of the iPhone, of Android devices, of tablets that we deal with every day, has now permeated into IT. And users, especially millennial users, expect the same type of experience from an IT environment that they do from their personal telephony environment. And that, of course, has had a dramatic impact on the way we develop apps, how we rationalize them, what we utilize them for, and how they percolate through the workplace. In fact, now, I really think that more than ever, this is an application-driven economy that we're currently in. So what's part two of that? Well, mobility, of course, and this came up last night in the CIO panel. We're talking about back-end infrastructure. What's the biggest thing impacting back-end infrastructure? They said mobility. And why is that? Because mobility changes everything about the way IT operates. Number one, it's, of course, you no longer know where you're going to be, where a device is. Number two, it changes the way the network looks, all that kind of stuff. And we'll dive into more detail on that. Cloud adoption. Of course, you can ask 10 people what the cloud is, and you'll get 15 answers, but we'll talk about particularly how cloud adoption is impacting the end-user experience. The Internet of Things. I heard a prediction today that there are going to be 40 billion devices connected to the global Internet soon. Well, and security and governance, because no matter what, when you're talking about IT and you're talking to people who are dealing with managing devices and users, the number one issue that they all have is security and governance. So I touched on some of the impact of the consumerization of IT on the end user experience. I think the biggest thing from a software and software rationalization viewpoint is there's an app for that mentality, and that more and more users are expecting apps for specific functions, entering orders, looking up a status of a trouble ticket. I mean, very small micro chunks. They want apps for that. A great example, Comcast is my entertainment/internet provider at home. They have 5 or 6 different apps that you download when you use their service. One for accessing account information, another one for actually manipulating the television, another one for checking on the status of the different devices. And it's more and more that's the way it is. You see this growth in the number of applications. And application support services, then, how those applications get deployed, managed, and even retired, becomes a huge part of the management experience and the end user experience. Again, I touched on the expectation of instant gratification, and it's not just in terms of being able to download apps quickly, but it's also giving that feedback in a fast manner. So users expect to be able to deliver, whether it's a rating for an application, or report a problem with an application, or even send thanks to the developer saying, hey, this is exactly what we needed, you know, over here in accounting. Thanks so much for delivering it. You really can't talk about consumerization IT without talking about the bring your own device phenomenon. And it's also, of course, we'll go into the discussion about mobility, but it was, you know, that first CEO or first sales executive who walked in with his personal phone and said, make this work on our network, that led to the current bring your own device phenomenon, where more than half of all enterprises today have at least some minimal support for bring your own device. Some organizations are opting for a CYOD, choose your own device architecture or strategy instead, where perhaps they'll have a couple of iPhone models, a couple of Android models, maybe a Windows phone, who knows. and allow you to choose from one of those, and then it is employer provided. Of course, that brings the issue if you're dealing in a BYOD environment. Sparing becomes a challenge, but then again, it's the whole discussion of how has end user support changed in a world where we have a disposable culture, where after it used to be you had the 3.5 year life for your device. Now it's I'll just throw it away, get another one when I go into the telecom provider who I got it from in the first place. So let's move on a little bit and talk about mobility as it relates to all of this. So it's not just having the devices, it's not just this consumerization of IT, but now we have this combination of mobility plus bring your own device. And of course, that means that you're now trying to support a mobile workforce with multiple mobile devices. Not so long ago, in many businesses, you had workstations that were shared by multiple users. It might be 2 or 3 guys on the shop floor had access to information where they would, a terminal where they would, or a PC where they'd enter information about projects that are under work, or to access drawings or what have you. Now, as of this year, the average user has 3.7 devices that are connected to the internet, and it's not uncommon to see that someone might have a desktop, a laptop, a phone, and a tablet as all that they're using for various business reasons in various places. It could be, of course, supporting that now is something that makes a lot of IT guys scratch their heads as they try to figure out, how do I wrap my arms around all of this different technology, especially as technology continues to multiply every day with new product announcements from Samsung, LG, Apple, and the like. So all these, of course, put an incredible burden on the support staff, amplifying the challenge of supporting all these users in a lot of ways, because number one, now they don't know where they are. Number two, they don't know what device they may be on at any given time. So integrating a mobility management solution that can help provide that information to IT or to a support organization becomes even more important. And of course now offices are anywhere there's Wi-Fi, so every McDonald's, every Starbucks, just about every cafe in the world, and anywhere in the world where you see that Wi-Fi emblem, that's where your network is. That's where your office is, and that's where your users may be. So let's talk a little bit about the cloud and how it impacts. And a lot of one of the keynote speakers at the event I did last night was one of the senior staff of CVS Health, and they're a Fortune 7 company, and they're struggling with how to streamline their infrastructure and looking at what they can do to either move things into the cloud, or if that's not practical because of regulations or what have you, become more like the cloud. And that's, I think, a desire for many organizations as they try and support the growing demands brought on by user departments who want that same kind of instant gratification and, plop down a credit card and provision a server that you can. One of my panelists was talking about how his CIO came out and asked why, if there was a new programming language that everyone was using, and he said, no. He says, well, gee, why is everyone buying books? And he said, well, that's not books. They're buying services on Amazon. So, where he saw Amazon.com on there, he thought it was actually books. But the developers were spinning up instances in the cloud because it was easier for them than to spin up their own infrastructure. And a lot of that, we see is true as it relates to supporting end users in a cloud-connected world. Cloud is inherently device agnostic. It expects to be connecting through the internet to some device and really doesn't care what it is as long as it talks that right protocol. So we see a lot of organizations trying to benefit from that, moving their back-end migration of infrastructure into the cloud, and when at the same time thinking, how can I do that so that I have a VDI or a thin client type approach to the different end user devices out there, and thus support a broader variety of end users with the same resources on the back end. And to that end, I mean, we see things like HTML5 gaining popularity, as well as cloud development platforms that let you write once and deploy many, which again kind of makes the actual end user device what IT thinks of it. It just kind of disappears, which is why I chose this title. Is this the end of end user computing? Is it going to go away? Obviously, it's not going to go away. I mean, we still all have computing devices, but the way that it interacts, that the devices we use interact with the back-end IT infrastructure, is evolving and continues to evolve. One of the things that I see is over time is the kind of an accordion of centralization and decentralization of resources, going from monolithic mainframes to local area network and server-based computing, and now back to infrastructure in a cloud, whether it's your on-premises cloud, a public cloud, or some hybrid of those. One of the things that does, though, moving things into the cloud and expecting everyone to be connecting via the internet and moving to multiple places around the globe to lower latency, is it enables cloud-based messaging collaboration tools that also now increase the application support burden for those of us in IT who are out there trying to keep the lights on and keep things running. This is probably going to have the greatest impact on end user computing, is the fact that there are devices out there that are going to be hot 5 years from now that we haven't even imagined. Whether it's devices that we wear, and you take a look at the Motorola and Apple watches, and it's not too different from the old wristwatch TV radio that Dick Tracy had back in the 50s in the comic books, which science fiction is science fact today. So we'll see new types of devices where they're embedded into machinery, into sensors that are used in the shipping department, whether they're embedded into appliances we use, devices within other devices. And this explosion of embedded technology, this is actually a very big area at Intel's developer forum last week that I attended. There were a number of announcements of devices with embedded processors for the Internet of Things, and for the maker community, who is also gaining a foothold into IT by developing tools and products that are in demand. So yeah, do we take the IT infrastructure library and apply that to the Internet of Things? If there are going to be 40 billion devices connected to the network, we certainly need some structure in the way that we go about interacting with them, dealing with them, and using them. So let's talk about security, because security is always the biggest challenge in this day and age. So first of all, of course, you have the non-stop assaults from malware sites, from bad actors who are just want to get in your network anyway, and they're trying to do it with persistent threats that may be exfiltrating data so slowly you don't even realize it. It could be a denial of service attack that is focused on just bringing your network down. And it could be just looking for information, trying to get personally identifiable information or client information or login information from your users. And we've seen very high-profile attacks lately reported by WikiLeaks on things like the Democratic National Committee in this election cycle. Very timely and very interesting to see where that's happening. But probably the biggest security challenge so many organizations face, and I'm sure all of you who are on the line today are facing that same one, is mobility, because mobility and security are just natural enemies. There are a couple of reasons that make this a real challenge, and not the least of which is the fact that your mobile device or mobile devices that are supposed to be under your purview can be handed off to anyone else at any time, not for malicious purposes, but it could be as simple as a 10-year-old asking to borrow dad's phone for a minute so that he can check on some game or something, or an email or a text or an Instagram from one of his friends, clicks on a link in a message, and poof, there's malware installed on the phone, and hands it back to his parent, who is completely clueless to that anything has ever happened. And you know, that's not an uncommon experience to happen in today's world. And then there's the whole concept of a perimeter, the security perimeter. I mean, if Wi-Fi is your main method of connectivity, is there such thing anymore? Is there an inside the firewall and outside the firewall? A lot of organizations find that no, it's just, you have to assume that everything everywhere is going to be compromised, and decide whether you're going to rely on VPNs, which can bring things to a halt in many cases just for the amount of impact it can have on performance, or how to utilize remote services and cloud-based services that give you the level of security that you expect from something that is on premises, whether that's multi-factor authentication or something like that, you know, carrying around a fob, or using your phone to generate a one-time password. All of these things are becoming more and more critical for a number of reasons. Number one, of course, the growth in the number of regulations, government regulations, whether you're in a controlled industry like the medical field where HIPAA is important, or whether you're in financial and have to process credit card information or personally identifiable information of any kind, whether or not you are working in a cross-border environment and you know, bringing or need to have information from the European Union and now the United Kingdom, which is going to be separated again from the EU. This brings on a number of management issues that really make it complex and difficult to understand even what you have to secure, how you have to secure it, what has to be encrypted, where it can be, and how that impacts your users when they travel to those countries. So it's not all doom and gloom. I mean, that's the beauty of it is there are new opportunities. Having a BYOD environment brings opportunities to rationalize all the applications that are in use in the enterprise across all those devices. Having these new devices and new applications does have a real business bottom line value. There's a reason why organizations are out there supporting these and encouraging their users to do that, because there are new business functions and shorter time to value for all of the users out there. And even from a configuration and deployment standpoint, it's a lot easier to configure an iPhone or an Android device than it is to physically configure, as we did in the old days, PC client devices. You basically get it from the manufacturer the way you're going to use it, perhaps except for the iPhone with the addition of an additional memory chip to go in there to boost up the manufactured installed memory in there. And you know, this really, from a business perspective, is a good thing, because now just having these devices brings into IT a new way of looking at things, and perhaps can accelerate all sorts of business functionality as well as user performance. So what does this mean in terms of services? Number one, whatever we're talking about today is going to be different tomorrow. Change, constant change, always change. That's the new normal. That's the way things are. That's the way things are going to be, and that's just not going to change. Why? Because the pace of technological advancement continues to accelerate. I mean, I saw an ad on the TV today for, back to school 16 gig memory sticks for $3.99, basically 25 cents a gig, and just trying to fathom how, if I had walked into an IT shop, 10 years ago, and said I can get memory for 25 cents a gig, what truck did that fall off? You'd be laughed at. Another thing about that is that as simple as it is to buy that 16 gig and plug it into any of my devices, that's really the kind of user experience that we want to give for deploying a new end user device, whether it's a laptop or a mobile device, like a phone or a tablet, a non-PC device. It needs to be more like going into Verizon or AT&T store and saying, I'll take that and give me that and okay, and you walk out with it and it's done. Because honestly, there's a lot less desktop break fix in this age of disposable devices. It's not like they're coming out to repair your iPhone. If anything, you might get a loaner while it's fixed, or just trash it altogether. So the whole support methodology that organizations have to deal with it's going to change. Along with that, that loss of break fix for a lot of organizations, there are areas of growth for support organizations, and end user support is going to see perhaps the largest growth in image management for all of these devices, because now as they become increasingly specialized for functions, I mean, we can have an opportunity to deliver devices to a particular departmental user or a particular executive that is tailored for him and ready to go out the box, whether that's a phone, a PC, a Mac, whatever. So we're going to see a lot of growth in that. Whole concept of deploying, refreshing, and migrating things from old platforms to new. We'll see a merger of the desk side and into application support as users become more mobile and increasingly need support for the apps in a real-time environment over a wireless connection from wherever they are. Perhaps the stickiest part of this, again, is printers and other peripherals. It's growing challenge. I know I have had more than one occasion when I have gone to print something from my laptop and it is printed out in a corporate headquarters 250 miles away because I was on the VPN. Getting a better way of integrating printing and other peripheral devices in the way that users are using their machines today in this world where your printer may be on one network and you might be on another network is an increasing challenge, and something I think that a service that a lot of organizations are going to be able to provide and make things simpler for their end users. So let's talk about some best practices that we can use to be ready for this, the beginning of the end for end user computing. It's death and then it's rebirth in this form of ultra mobile environment that we're living in. Number one, get ready for change. It's going to come, and it's going to come, and things are going to change again. So you need to optimize the way you do your business. Growing number of devices, perhaps a smaller number of servers on premises, but a much greater number of devices being hitting the network, and what that means for all kinds of reasons. Adopting and enforcing standards is, it's a challenge at best. Getting organizations to develop firm policies and enforce them as to what type of devices, what type of applications, how users can interact and connect to you, access methods, whether to use ITIL, whether there are other service and support standards you want to adopt to ensure that you are meeting governance needs and requirements. These are all something that we struggle with, but really need to be enforced in an age where we have a growing number of end-user type devices and growing number of users. Because honestly, with the changes that we are making and the ways that we are trying to interact with us, you take a look at the bottom of the screen. You know, even here at DISYS, we're saying connect with us by Facebook or Twitter, or watch us on YouTube or Google or what have you. Organizations of every kind want to make it as easy as possible to connect with their customers and their partners. And so having portals or having self-service applications means that your user base is now grown from your own employees to your employees and your partners, your employees, your partners, and your customers. In some cases, increasing the traffic on your network by 10 or 100-fold, you know, instantly by providing those kind of self-service portals. So the standards that you use for access and the types of device and the methods that are used become even more important. You can't manage what you don't know. Rationalizing the applications that you have, why they're there, why they're being used, being able to end-of-life ones that are no longer critical, separating what is business and what is not business from devices is also going to play a larger part and role as the number of devices out there grow. One of the ways to support all of this growth, virtualization, is something that's been very popular. Server virtualization, of course, created the cloud. Now we have storage virtualization and network virtualization as well, and some people call it software-defined everything or hyper-converged architecture. The point is that we have these technology building blocks, server storage network. We can virtualize on them all sorts of functionality, whether it's compute or storage or network ports, and by doing that, it makes it easier to get the back-end applications into these virtual environments, which are easier to maintain and manage and easier to migrate should there be a reason such as an outage that would make you want to move workloads from one place to another. So virtualizing those non-core resources so that all you're dealing with from a physical perspective is as little as possible is great. We used to say 3.5 year tech life cycle for a refresh cycle. That changes by product category, so make sure that you are adjusting the life cycle for a mobile phone in a different way that you might for a laptop. One of the things to keep in mind too is that if you are using virtual desktop solutions and basically using the mobiles as you know, Citrix type devices, then you can probably get more life out of a device, and the biggest issue for it could be cracked screens rather than any other type of performance problem due to age. I probably have to say, when it comes to supporting end users, one of the things I've learned in 40 years in IT is you got to choose the right guy to be your partner as you're doing it. This one thing that you do is probably going to make the biggest difference in everything else that you do in your whole support life cycle going forward. So what you really need to do is choose a partner who's going to give you the flexibility and the breadth of offering to deliver the services that you want and need to manage this crazy end user computing world that we live in. I want to talk a little bit before we wrap up about and get to the Q&A about DISYS, who is kind enough to let me talk to all of you today. They have a ton of infrastructure support services through a number of pricing models that really can support an organization of almost any size. And although they started out really on kind of the high-end enterprise. It's because of the changes in the way that every enterprise does business, no matter how big you are. They offer tools and engagements that can help you get there, including managed services from soup to nuts, program management of all kinds, staff augmentation when you need bodies, whether it's development bodies or support bodies to get a job done. And they'll take an approach on a project-by-project basis to get you there. They are vendor agnostic. They offer infrastructure support services that are going to deliver end-to-end project-based consulting service in the following areas. So take a look whether or not you still have a data center, or you are looking at migrating some data center functions to the cloud and trying to understand how you're going to get there, whether you're looking at data center consolidation in this age of virtualization to get from 30 racks of servers down to 3 or 3 servers down to 1. End user computing, we talked a lot about it today. There's still a lot of traditional end user shops out there that are maybe not so mobile and not so reliant on those devices. They can certainly perform all those traditional services, even as we all migrate into this world of the vanished or vanishing end using computer model and focus on the back end to get there. Also offering network and telecom tools and service and support plans to get to no matter how your communications are integrated, either it's UC or traditional PBX, they can help you with that. And increasingly, as we are in a world of multi-channel engagements with our customers, point of sale becomes just one way in which we use that. Point of sale devices now, of course, appear on everything from kiosks to iPhones, thanks to things like Square that let you basically turn any mobile device into a point of service terminal. And DISYS can help you out with all of those areas as well. I'd like to thank all of you for attending today. You see on the screen a link that you can click on to find out more about DISYS. Also, there's information if you want to connect with my good buddy Lee, who convinced me to come here today and talk to all of you. You can do that. At this point, I'd like to thank you all for attending. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to entertain them.
Thank you, Michael. We don't have any questions today, so I would like to thank everyone for joining us today. And just like Michael said, please stay connected with us via our social media channels and look out for a recording of this webinar within the next day or two in your email. Thank you, everyone, and have a good day.
Thanks, Isaiah.
Thank you, Michael.